And good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Dartmouth School Committee to order for Monday, April 26th, 2021. Could we have a roll call, please, Ms. Gunther?
Chris Oliver.
Here.
Shannon Jenkins.
Here.
Kathleen Amaral.
Here.
Mary Waite.
Here.
John Nunes.
Yep.
And thank you very much, everyone. As a reminder, per Governor Baker's order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the public will not be allowed to physically access this school committee meeting. The meeting will be conducted remotely. Members of the public can access the meeting via live stream at youtube.com/DHS-TV Media. In addition, the event will be rebroadcast on DCTV channels 9 and 18 on the following days: Wednesday and Thursday at 5 p.m., Friday at 6 a.m., Saturday at 8 a.m., and Sunday at 2 p.m. School committee reserves the right to implement additional remote participation procedures and will notify the public of these procedures as soon as practicable. Just so everyone knows, we are coming to you remotely this evening, as immediately following our school committee meeting, we'll be having a joint session with the select board and the finance committee. So we look forward to that. With that, at this time, we typically allow a few minutes for anyone wishing to comment on any of tonight's agenda items. Ms. Gunther, have you received any public comments?
I have not.
Thank you very much. And as a reminder, the viewing public can always forward their comments for us to consider to Kathleen Genthner at dartmouthschools.org, and we can revisit that at the end of this meeting. With that being said, Chair will entertain a motion to approve for the approval of the regular session minutes of April 5th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Dr. Jenkins, I believe that was. On the motion, any further discussion?
It was either Miss Amaral or Miss Waite. It was not me.
It was not you. Okay, I had my screen minimized.
That's all right.
So that must have, I think it was Miss Amaral or Mrs. Amaral.
I think we both did it at the same time. It's all
All
good.
right. So we'll give it to Kathleen this
That's
time,
fine.
Mary. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Oliver.
Yes.
Shannon Jenkins.
Yes.
Kathleen Amaral.
Yes.
Mary Waite.
Yes.
John Nunes.
Yes.
And thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, not sure if we have our student rep on the call with us this evening. I don't know if he was supposed to be joining us or she.
Just
Huh?
coming now.
All right.
Mr.
Right on.
Mr. Tebow did say they were coming.
Perfect. I had thought so. We just wasn't sure. Perfect. So at this time, it looks like we have Morgan joining us. Good evening, Morgan. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're just you just missed it. We are just at the point where we're going to turn it over to you for our student rep report to see what's happening over at Dartmouth High School.
Perfect. So as you guys know, we just had April vacation, but before that, around 130 sophomores took advantage of the opportunity, and we all took the PSATs, which was pretty scary. As somebody who took them, I was a little nervous, but it's important because it's SAT practice, and the SATs are normally taken next year as a junior, so it's good practice for that. We also have 4 student artists work on display at the New Bedford Art Museum, which is interesting. So there are Dartmouth High Art Club members, which is Gabby Aruda, Mia Carter, Julia Gilchrist. They all have art expeditions on display under the topic Passage of Time. And then senior shoutouts are underway. If you follow the DHS Instagram and Twitter accounts, they have daily senior shoutouts to our graduating class and all that they've accomplished at DHS, which is really interesting. And still with the seniors, they began signing their commitment to graduate banner during their lunch sessions today. and spring sports also begun, which was pretty cool. Over the next few weeks, we start the MCAS session, and then further on, we do start AP tests. So lots of testing coming up. Yay. But yeah, that's about it right now.
Awesome. Well, sure sounds like there's a lot going on. Congratulations to you for getting through the PSATs. Thank you for your report. Do you have anything else for us, or does the committee have anything for Morgan?
No, thank you, Morgan.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
You too.
welcome.
Thanks.
You too. Take care. Perfect. So we thank Morgan for her report. And at this time, we're going to typically after every year, annually after the election, we have the reorganization per school committee policy of the Dartmouth School Committee. So at this time, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Bonnie Gifford. So in her role as secretary to the school committee, so she can accept nominations for the chair.
Very good. So obviously, at this time, I will take nominations for the chair for the new coming year.
Thank you, Dr. Gifford. I'd like to make a motion that we nominate Dr. Jenkins as the chair of the Dartmouth School Committee.
I'll second that.
Mary Waite, second. Okay. Any other nominations?
I would like to, are we doing this as this is discussion, right?
Sure.
So you can nominate someone else for chair if you want.
Yourself?
No, I don't want to nominate myself.
Yourself? You're welcome.
Currently not nominating myself.
Ms. Amaral? Did you want to add something?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay. Do we need to take a roll call or we just do,
Yes.
yes,
that's-
Mr. Noon says yes. Okay,
Has to be
roll call,
roll
Ms.
call.
Ganther?
Chris Oliver,
Yes.
Shannon Jenkins,
Yes.
Kathleen Amaral,
Yes.
Mary Waite,
Yes.
John Nunes.
Yes. Congratulations, Shannon.
Do you
Yeah,
continue to run elections, Dr. Gifford? Does that go over to me now?
Now it's you. I'm all done. I did my part.
Okay. So at this time, I will entertain any nominations for vice chair.
Madam Chair, I would love to do the honor. Thinking back to my first term, I would like to nominate, if she so chooses, to accept Mary Waite for vice chairperson this year.
Oh.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, so I have a nomination by Ms. Amaral and a second by Ms. Waite, by Mr. Oliver. Ms. Waite, do you accept that nomination?
I do. Thank you.
Are there any other nominations? All right, so then we can close the nomination. Are there any discussion on the nomination? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Genther, can we have a roll call, please?
Chris Oliver,
Yes.
Shannon Jenkins,
Yes.
Kathleen Amaral,
Yes.
Mary Waite,
Yes.
John Nunes.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, so our next order of business would be to, I will accept nominations for or appointment of secretary to the school committee.
I would like to nominate Dr. Gifford.
I'll second.
That.
All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Oliver, a second by Mary Waite. Any other nominations? Don't all come forward at once, right? All right, if there are no other nominations, is there any discussion on the nomination?
It's with the same rate of pay, correct?
All right, so hearing no further discussion, Ms. Genther, can we have a roll call, please?
Chris Oliver,
Yes.
Shannon Jenkins,
Yes.
Mary Waite,
Yes.
John Nunes.
Yes.
All right, so according to the agenda, the next item of business is for me to make comments, but I'm not one for long speeches, so I will just say thank you for your votes, and I look forward to working with you all again this year. Our next item of business is the school committee assignments. Do we want to sort of go through these in order in the sheet that Ms. Genther gave to us and see if anybody wants to switch or stay? Is that how you guys want to proceed? That work?
That's fine.
Works fine.
That's
Okay,
fine.
so right now we have Mary Waite at the Dartmouth Education Foundation. Mary, do you want to stay there for sort of?
Yeah,
continuity on?
Sure.
And I also
You do that too.
do that as well, but we'll.
You've been doing that really even more than I have, so,
We'll say you're the official representative.
okay.
Mr. Oliver, we have you down for the SMEC, the Southern Mass Educational Collaborative. Do you want to stay in that role? I think you've been in there quite a while, which is good for continuity, but if you want to change it up, that's fine too.
I'll be happy to stay with that position. I'm currently the chair of the Southeastern Mass Collaborative, so I'd be happy to continue in my role there.
Given that you're chair, let's keep you there. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Catherine Cooper says thank you.
Mr. Nunes is currently our representation to the MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. Mr. Nunes, do you want to stay there or does anybody want to take over for that?
I'm good with that.
That's great. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Excellent. Mr. Nunes, we also have you as our negotiations representative. And Ms. Amaral is the backup. Can we leave it at that? Were you still willing to do that for us, Mr. Nunes?
Sure.
We definitely, I know I appreciate your willingness to do that as it's a difficult time for
It is.
the rest of us to make. So we really appreciate you doing that. And Ms. Amaral, can you still be backup? I mean, Mr. Nunes is so dependable. I don't think you have to back up very much. So awesome. Last year, we decided that we would have no specific school assignments. Do we want to continue with that or do we want to go back to school assignments? What's the committee's opinion on that one?
Can I ask a question? Actually, in that note, in the past, what have those assignments entailed since I came in and we were, not, specifically targeting schools or within our domain?
There wasn't, I don't think, I'm going to look to Mr. Nunes, our sort of committee historian, but I don't think there were any specific duties. It was more just the administrators could know that if they wanted to talk to
Okay.
one, that was their assigned representative.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was,
Okay.
you pop in, take a walk around, make an
Okay.
appointment with the building administrator and, pop in and walk around and talk with them every once in a while. That's fine. The way it is right now, personally, I think it's fine. We're all available. Schools are
Right.
just really now starting to get back into going. So, I think it's better if we leave it the way it is.
That sounds fair.
That's my opinion.
I would agree.
I would agree. Okay, so we're all in
Yeah, I
agreement
think that
that we're
sounds
gonna leave
fair.
that one? Okay. Next on the policy committee, we have Kathleen Amaral and Mary Waite. Do
That's fine.
we want to keep that? You guys fine with that?
Yeah, it was pretty minimal this past year, so it was fine for me to stay on.
Okay, and then Mr. Oliver, you were on the technology committee? which is-
And I am perfectly happy staying on that committee, considering my background.
Yes. We have the Fields and Facility Committee, which I'm not sure. I mean, we can continue to have that and have representatives, Mr. Nunes and Ms. Amaral. I'm not sure if you guys met or what happened.
And again, I think with the COVID, there weren't a lot of meetings type of deal, especially with the stadium renovations.
Right, and then
that was the big thing, so.
Go ahead, Mr. Oliver.
And then also, I believe, Mr. Kiley, correct me if I'm wrong, there's also the turf field committee that has been kind of overseeing the stadium, specifically the stadium project.
Right. I would expect that we may meet this year, though, on the facilities committee, so.
Okay, do you two want to stay or anybody else wants that? That's fine too.
No, I can do that. I'm good with that.
Okay. I feel like my name's only on here once. Miss Amaral, do you want me to replace you on that or do you want to stay on that?
I'm happy with what's the committee's pleasure. my difficulty this past year has just been that 3:30 hour. It's really tricky for me, my son coming home, but I've only come into conflict once, so
Okay.
I'm happy to stay and,
Okay, well, you can just leave that, that's fine. The budget committee is Mrs. Amaral and myself with Mr. Nunes as backup. You can leave that the same as well. I mean, we can leave everything the same. I think there hasn't been a ton of work on a lot of these committees, in part because it's been pandemic. So I think it may make sense to just keep them as they are. Ms. Waite did mention that there are two sort of assignments that aren't on here that we might add. And one is the diversity committee, which is Ms. Amaral and myself, which we haven't met yet. So I don't think we want to change it up, but I do think we should maybe put that on there with respect to assignments. And then Wade is also serving on the charter committee.
Yep.
And I think, again, for continuity's sake, unless any of you are dying to jump into the charter review committee, I
I
think
actually kind of like it, I have to say, believe it or not, but they meet fairly once a month. So I'd like to stay on the committee unless someone really is desperate to, put me off.
I don't think
No.
any of us are, but I would like to see Ms. Genther, if we can add that to the list when we finalize after all of this. So I think
Dr. Jenkins?
Go ahead, Mr. Oliver.
Thank you. And I would just like to add, I'd also like to thank Mrs. Heidi Brooks, as she is our
Yes.
other school committee representative to the Charter Review Committee. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Waite, but she has taken over the chair.
She has.
She's
tremendous
taken over
amount
the
of work, and
chair of
she's done a
that
great
committee.
job.
So
Yeah,
I
and
just
Fabulous job.
that's awesome to hear. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to publicly thank Mrs. Heidi Brooks for her role there.
Great. Yes, I will echo your thanks. That's a big, my husband served in that role the last time this came up. It's a lot of work. So
It
I
is a lot.
much appreciate her stepping up to that and agreeing to serve as one of our representatives. So I believe that we've decided we're not going to make any changes. We're going to add those two committee assignments to that document. I don't think we need to make a motion here. No, this is, I think, all good. That's what I thought. Okay. So if there's is there any other comments, questions, concerns?
No.
if I may, I just wanted to, I don't know if but I just want to quickly thank Chris for his time serving as chairperson. This has been a very difficult year, and I know previous, I really only served in the preliminary stages of COVID, and you really have stepped up and done a great job this past year. And I just wanted to thank you for your service, and Shannon as well as vice chair. So that's all.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that, great job, guys. It's been a tough year, managing a lot, and certainly many more meetings from what I understand that we would typically have. And just, there was a lot. So thank you both.
My thanks to Mr. Oliver, who did a lot of that work.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words, everyone. No, it was certainly a lot. I'm more than happy to see it go over to Dr. Jenkins.
I tried to convince him that he should stay on for another year, but that didn't work.
I was wondering.
All right, so the next item on the agenda, moving on to new business, is the 2021 summer sports camps. And I believe, Mr. Kiley, are you going to talk to us about this?
Muted, Mr. Kiley.
I am, yeah. Thank you. So I sent an email. I apologize. It was a little late. It was this afternoon. And what we are proposing is to do a summer sports camp similar to what we have done in the past. It's now been a couple of years, obviously, since we didn't do one last summer. So we would be talking about summer sports camp for students grades 2 through 9, a variety of activities. It would be a 5 consecutive week where students can be signed up for any particular athletic pursuit that they enjoy. We will keep the cost the same as 2 years ago, so it'll be $80 per week. We are hoping to finalize soon the dates. it would either be June 21st or June 28th. This year is the beginning of the cycle, would start then. It's a little difficult because we're actually going to have high school sports still playing at that time, which we normally wouldn't. So we're working on that. It will be based at Dartmouth High School. And we will obviously have all COVID protocols in place, and we will include, statement to folks who sign up that, obviously things are subject to change based on health requirements and the COVID situation. And, we need to be flexible like we need to be in all things these days. Previously, in previous years, the camp has made a small profit, like a couple of $1,000s the last few years. So we hope that we'd have the kind of enrollment. We've had about 200 students enroll 2 years ago. So we hope that, we'd find a similar number of students interested, or maybe more. Maybe people are going to really want to get out of the house after, having gone through all that we've been through. And basically those funds can be used to support athletic equipment or PE equipment needs for, for the schools. So that is our proposal, and I'd appreciate your consideration on that.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Kiley? Mr. Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really quickly, I think you think you're right, Mr. Kiley. I think we'll probably end up with a lot of parents wanting to sign their students up just based on trying to get out there, especially with this opportunity. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a great turnout.
Any other questions, comments?
Motion to approve.
All right, so we have a motion to approve from Mr. Nunes. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, a second from Ms. Amaral. Is there any other comments and questions?
Madam
Ms.
Chair.
Amaral?
No, this is great. And I agree that we're probably going to see more families interested than in past years. And I just appreciate, I just want to, in the planning that having 1 week at least in June would allow for presumably and potentially students who participate in extended school year to have an opportunity to sign up for, a camp if they so choose. So that's really appreciated. I know there's been an effort for that over the last several years. And that's just to note really, really good. Thank you for the equity in that.
Any other comments? I will just echo my colleagues and say I'm super excited to, this step towards a little bit more normal. I know camp's going to look a little bit different, but the fact that we're going to be able to do this summer makes me excited. So, yay. If there's no further discussion, Ms. Genthner, can we have a roll call, please?
Chris Oliver,
Yes.
Shannon Jenkins,
Yes.
Kathleen Amaral,
Yes.
Mary Waite,
Yes.
John Nunes.
Yes.
Excellent. Our next item of business is revisions to the handbook. Dr. Gifford, are you going to lead us through this?
Yes, so we'll be looking for a vote for approval for the handbook for this year, noting there are only 3 changes I'll call your attention to. Really not anything substantial, but on page 12, the DHS cost of transcripts was increased from $4 to $5. So that's been added to the handbook. On page 13, we took out wording that talked about progress reports. They have no longer given out since all the teachers use Aspen. There's language about families accessing everything they need through that. And also on page 14, a simple change of what we call a student support team. It used to be called case management team. So it's just little housekeeping things, nothing substantial. So we would ask for a vote of approval for that.
And so let me just follow up, Dr. Gifford. This is the one that's common to all of the schools. And then typically the high school does a supplement to that, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Other questions for Dr. Gifford? I'll entertain a motion to approve the handbook with the amendments, the changes that Dr. Gifford outlined.
Second. I'll second.
I need someone to move it first.
Oh, so moved.
moved.
So moved.
All right, so we'll go, Mr. Nunes moved it and Ms. Waite seconded it. Since she already seconded, we don't have to go to that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call, please, Ms. Genther?
Chris Oliver,
Yes.
Shannon Jenkins,
Yes.
Kathleen Amaral,
Yes.
John Nunes,
Yes.
Mary Waite.
Yes.
Okay, our next item under new business is the superintendent's update. So I will hand it right back to you, Dr.
Right,
Gifford.
thank you. And seeing we only have half an hour, so the important thing is to have Mr. Tebow here. As we know, we'll be moving to bring the high school students back to full in-person ASAP. Just as a reminder, the middle school students are coming in on Wednesday. And in anticipation of the high school coming in, there's been a lot of work going on, of course. So we asked Mr. Tebow to come on board tonight to provide a little update to that. He's there somewhere. There he
Can you,
comes.
hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I couldn't start my video, so I'm hoping Mr. Parati did that for me. It would not let me start my own video here. So thank you for having me. I put together a quick, oh, now the host has asked me to start my video. All right.
There we go.
All right, here I am. I'm going to share my screen if it's all right with folks, just because I have a presentation that kind of quickly goes through what I think are some of the questions that folks might have. And at the end, I'm happy to answer any questions, that folks might still have. So hang on one second. I apologize. I have not used Zoom in a little bit because we use Google Meet at Dartmouth High School. So let me just.
Mr. Tebow, if it's any consolation, I'm now associate dean at our school and I chair meetings of our faculty and they're all like telling me, push this button, do it.
Right.
They're so good with the technology and I haven't been in class and I'm not. So I know that feeling.
So here it's, Zoom is just different enough from Google Meet that it presents these challenges. So I think you should be able to see my Google Slides presentation now, hopefully. So real quickly, I thought I'd just give a quick overview. I would talk about the 2 learning models. And then I know what's on a lot of folks' minds are what are the health and safety protocols. And then, as I said, I'll answer any questions. So quickly, just an overview. If I could summarize it in one sentence, it would be that the biggest difference is we're moving from 6 feet of distance inside of the classroom down to 3 feet. That's the biggest change in terms of safety measures with as we transition back to full in-person learning. So obviously, more students means less space in a classroom. So our classes will be at 3 feet of space between students as opposed to 6 feet, as I said. That's the minimum. 3 feet's the minimum. Obviously, in some of our smaller classes, more space will be possible, but 3 feet will be the minimum. Another change is that hybrid learning will no longer be an option for students once we go to the full in-person return. The 2 models will be full in-person or fully virtual. The other piece that I would stress is that all of the COVID-19 mitigation measures are going to remain in place. And I give a lot of credit to our teachers, our faculty, and our students especially, because they have done an excellent job this school year in terms of being compliant with mask wearing, washing or sanitizing their hands frequently throughout the day. So those mitigation measures that we know are so important, especially the mask wearing, I'm very comfortable in saying that they're well established and have been, our students have done a great job with it this year. Morning arrival and dismissals will remain virtually the same. Lunches, I want to stress this, lunches will continue to be 6 feet distance between all students at all times. So I'll talk a little bit about how we achieved that in a second. So the 2 learning models, as I said, it's full in-person, meaning that we, students who opt for this We'll expect them to physically report to Dartmouth High School 5 days a week, which I know many of our students are looking forward to. Our teachers, I know, are looking forward to having increased in-person time with our students as well. Again, classrooms will be arranged to provide at least 3 feet of distance, or there are some classrooms, which we talked about this back in the fall, our science classrooms, our art classrooms, and our computer labs. In those classes, in those classrooms, it's just under 3 feet when you measure seat edge to seat edge as the guidance calls for. So in those classrooms, and you'll see a picture of this on the next slide, in those classrooms, our maintenance staff has worked diligently to install plexiglass barriers in between each student workstation so that there's that protection between students. Only students in the full in-person learning model, only students who have to quarantine due to COVID or a medical reason, those students are going to be permitted to join class via Google Meet, obviously, because we want to continue to provide them an education if they should have to quarantine. The second option is the full virtual learning model. And for that option, students will be enrolled in Edgenuity. We have 164 students who are currently in Edgenuity. And as we started this planning, we reached out to those students, to the families of those students, and we asked, if we were to return in person, what would your preference be? And only somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 15 students, and it has shifted a little bit. That was a month ago already that we did that outreach. So it shifted a little bit, but it's still around 10 to 15 students who have indicated if we return in person, they'd like to return. They'd like to return. The full virtual learning model, we think will be fairly stable, meaning students who have already been in that model will continue in that model. However, if there are students who are uncomfortable or parents who are uncomfortable with the 3 feet, that is an option. They can, have their student begin full virtual, and we will customize those Edgenuity courses so that the coursework represents what is doable and practical for the final however many weeks we're back in person. Again, I can't stress enough that the hybrid model is going away, and I'm stressing that because we want our students, unless they're sick, we want our students to come in person. One of the challenges that we have had in the hybrid model is some students have opted to remain home, and not because they're ill necessarily, but they had a long night of homework. So, and I get it, I understand it, but that's a challenge that teachers have found to be daunting at times when you have half your students in front of you, half of them remote, figuring out who's who. It's just an added challenge that kind of takes away from the educational experience. So once we are full in person, and that's the choice that student has made, unless they're sick, we want them to physically come into the building. And the Department of Ed has also stressed that the hybrid model isn't an option moving forward once we go full return. They've actually gone ahead and said that those hours would no longer count towards time on learning if you remained in the hybrid model. So that's the reasoning for just the two models here. I'm sure there are some questions about transitioning from one model to another, and I kind of alluded to that. If students are returning from the VLA to full in-person learning, those students have been made aware. Like I said, we did outreach to VLA, our VLA students. Those students have been made aware that we're not going to just drop them into live classes at Dartmouth High School. They're going to finish out their curriculum in Edgenuity. They'll be in the building, which means that during the PACE period, they'll have access to in-person go and get support if they need it. But in terms of, I've been in biology class in Edgenuity all year. It just does not make sense educationally to be dropped into a live in-person biology class with a few weeks to go in the year. The curriculum, while the standards are the same, the sequencing of the units is just different enough that it's just not practical to do. We just had a student for extenuating circumstances who needed to return, and we returned them. What we found was there was a unit that she had already done in Ingenuity that our live biology class was just getting to, and vice versa. There was a unit that she had not done in Ingenuity yet that had already been covered in the in-person class. So for curriculum alignment purposes, it doesn't, it's not sound, we don't feel, to do that. Another question that we thought would come up would be about students who are opting to transition to hybrid at this point in the year. As I already mentioned, we're customizing the courses down to, estimated times that make sense for however, many weeks we have left in the school year. But the other question that comes up is, how will the grade be determined? And since we have 3 terms worth of grades for these students already, those 3 term grades will just be added to the actual grade they earn in Ingenuity during the final term and divide by 4. So you get you get an average, and that would be their final grade, which again, that's different than how the students who have been in VLA all year will have their final grade determined. But we thought it was important to point that out. All right, on to the health and safety measures. Again, 3 feet in each classroom, seat edge to seat edge. I already alluded to the fact that maintenance has installed plexiglass barriers. Also, in a handful, I'm talking 4 classes, 7 classes total, but 4 new ones, where the largest class size can't fit in that particular classroom. So for that class only, we would schedule it in an alternate room. For example, all year we've had a world language class, one of the world language classes. The cohorts were split unevenly. It's just how it happened. One of them could not fit in the classroom, so they've been meeting in the auditorium, and the teacher for that period only goes down to the auditorium and teaches that class. It's a burden for our teachers, but our teachers have been fantastic in terms of making it work. And so that's what we would do moving forward at 3 feet. Like I said, there's going to be 4 additional classes, we believe, where the room that they're currently assigned to just won't work in terms of spacing at 3 feet. So we'll relocate them for that period only. But again, we will be able to provide that 3 feet distance, which is important. So these are some of what the classrooms look like set up at 3 feet. The picture on the left with the desks, those are new desks. Thank Mr. Kiley for acquiring. We did need additional desks at the high school level because we're using so many desks in the cafeteria to do the dining. So we did need some additional desks, and that's what you see there in the room. Those are spaced out 3 feet from seat edge to seat edge. The classroom on the right is actually one of our science classrooms. You can see, it's not a great picture, I apologize, but you can see the installation of the plexiglass barriers that I was talking about that bring us into compliance. And you can see that those chairs are obviously not 3 feet apart. It's a little bit under 3 feet because the tables themselves are just under 6 feet. So in a number of our science classrooms, you see that. The next classroom you see here on the left, again, similar to our science rooms, that's one of our art labs, one of our art rooms. And again, you can see the plexiglass set up so that the workstations that our students are at are separated by that protective barrier. And then to the right, that's obviously a computer lab. Again, with the plexiglass barriers in between each workstation. So in addition to the 3 feet, other important safety measures are the mitigation strategies that have been in place all year long. I want to stress that, especially the universal mask wearing, the excellence in hand hygiene, maintaining distance when, at least 3 feet, but more whenever possible. The self-monitoring for symptoms and erring on the side of caution has been an important part too that has contributed to no transmission within our school. Our students, our faculty and staff have been phenomenal about self-monitoring and erring on the side of caution. So that's allowed us to avoid any transmission in the school, obviously. And then the final one that I remind folks about, because the weather is nice now, again, it's the adequate ventilation. We've had air purifiers in every room all year long, but now we get the added benefit of, with the nice weather, we can open up those windows again and really make sure that the air ventilation is more than adequate. So that's an important protective factor as well for us. Morning arrivals and end of day dismissals are not going to change, at least not initially. If we find that we have to make adjustments, we will. But again, morning arrivals, our buses will drop off at 7:15. Students will go right to first period class. I didn't note it on the slide, but one of the changes that will take place is that our breakfast, right now we have the grab and go breakfast, students grab it and go. Breakfast is only going to be available in the dining hall once we go to the full return, and that's because our classrooms will be at 3 feet, not at 6 feet as they currently are. So we want every student who's going to have breakfast to do that in the dining hall where everything's set up for 6 feet. So that is a change that we'll be making. And I've already spoken with Mrs. Sheridan about that. So our food service is on board. And they've been phenomenal as well all year, our food service folks as well. I want to give them a shout out. Afternoon dismissal will continue to be tiered, meaning that the first tier that we dismiss are our first run buses, so we can get those buses off and out of the parking lot. Then we go to our student drivers and parental pickups. And then finally, second run buses, we dismiss at 2:10 and we kind of monitor them until their bus comes. Lunch was a big challenge for us, just because, again, we're going to be going from having 500 kids, 450 kids in the building at once to about 900 is what we anticipate based on the data we collected. So we have 3 lunches, which I did reach out to Jean Sheridan. As I said, she thought capacity to serve would not be an issue. So we just had to, it was a matter of finding additional seating capacity so that we could maintain 6 feet. And so I put the seat capacity for you up there. Our dining hall has 136 seats. Our auditorium has 75 seats. Those are the 2 spaces we've used so far this school year. Some of our larger lunches, we use both of those spaces. Most of our lunches we can accommodate with just our dining hall currently. But we're going to have to expand that. So the LMC has 51 seats. We put a number of desks in the back part of the LMC where what we refer to as the classroom portion of the LMC. We put a number of desks, individual desks there, spaced at 6 feet apart. And then with our tables that are in there as well, we can easily accommodate 51 seats at 6 feet. We're going to open up the outdoor patio area. And again, our custodial staff and Mr. Martin marked out and measured out, we can actually seat 45 students. That's using the stone wall. So students would be sitting, on the stone wall, and we would put up folding chairs outside as well. And then finally, the band room and the stage we would use as a last resort. And I spoke with Mr. Flint about this to make sure it would work for him and for the music department. And what we would do there is, on those lunches, we know we're going to need those additional 46 seats or so. We would offer that space to our music and band students. Again, we thought it was important that, since that's their space primarily, that they'd have ownership, and Mr. Flint thought that the music students would appreciate being able to have that option as well. And fortunately, the band room is fairly close proximity to the dining hall, which makes it easy to transition there. Passing time is a concern. But again, we have marked traffic patterns in the school we have all year. We are going to need some renewed vigilance in this area. And I say that because with 450 students, and then you add some of those 450 students have stayed home on hybrid days and Googled in, joined virtually, our halls are fairly empty. So transitions have not been an issue thus far. Obviously, when we double the number of students, that's an area that we will pay increased attention to, and we will continue to message to students that the expectation is that they move from one class to the next, that they're not stopping and talking. Again, if students are moving right from point A to point B and they're universally masked, I'm not concerned. There's no hallway that gets so packed that, it's stagnant, it's moving. So I'm not concerned, overly concerned, but we will have to make sure we pay attention and remind students constantly to keep moving and not to stop and chat. We did give consideration to staggering transitions or to making one ways, and we just didn't think those things were feasible. For the staggering transitions, particularly at the high school level, you can have a class of 25. And because, it's not like middle school or elementary where they all would transition to the next class together, they could go 25 different directions. One kid could go to a math class, another kid could go to a different math class, another kid could go to an art class. And so to control what classes are moving when and make sure they're arriving at classes that don't have students in it, it's just not possible to do. So rather than having kids waiting in the hallway to get into their next class, it's best if we just move from one class to the next quickly and efficiently. Restroom, the only other, building adjustment I would talk about would be the restroom access. We only have about half our restrooms open right now because we have half the students and it was easier to monitor. We're going to be expanding restroom access, obviously, so that, our capacity limit meets our need. But we're also, spoke with Mr. Kiley and we're able to add a hall monitor to help us make sure we monitor those restrooms. Again, 95% of our students do the right thing all the time, but restrooms are one of those areas in a high school that you do have to monitor. And so we'll be doing that. But again, I think our students will rise to the occasion. Finally, I just wanted to thank the faculty and staff. This is another transition. They've been through a number of transitions this year, and they've done a phenomenal job rolling with it, making transitions, making the changes we need as we go. Our students, especially, and our parents have been very supportive all year. Huge shout out to our custodial and maintenance staffs who worked throughout April vacation to install those plexiglass barriers, build desks and deliver them to the classrooms that needed them. Obviously, our central office has been very supportive as well. And of course, the school committee as well. And with that, I will answer any questions.
So I'll open it for questions, but I just want to remind everyone, we only have like 7 minutes. So I will ask everyone to try to at least question part brief. Mr. Nunes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 quick questions. The 164 that are still virtual, were they just more comfortable being virtual? And question number 2, how are you handling phys ed classes, with the locker rooms and such now that there's going to be more students in the phys ed class? I kind of think it's what MIAA has said with locker rooms and such for sporting events.
Right. So the first question you asked about why the 164 VLA students, it really varies. Some are there because they live with family members who just have, they're immunocompromised, so they feel more comfortable. For others, they've already been in a virtual environment for, by the time all this happens, we're going to be 4 or 5 weeks at the most of school left. Mm-hmm. So I think that plays into it as well. And then, to be honest with you, the other piece of the virtual education is students can move at their own pace, right? So for some students, they have to increase what they're doing in order to raise their grade. So it doesn't make sense for them to necessarily, come back and, so it's really a variety of reasons. In terms of the locker room, that's not something, to be honest, that I spoke with Mr. Crisafulli or Mr. Gaffney about, but I will, and I will get back to you. I do know that for phys ed, they, most of our students have not been changing or anything like that this year. And they've been doing things like lawn games that, they're not working up a huge sweat.
Yeah, okay.
So, but I'll get back to you on the locker rooms themselves.
Thank you. And again, those are, in your discussion, those are two things that came up in my mind. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm good, Madam Chair.
Other questions, comments, Ms. Waite?
Yeah, I just have a couple of quick things. When we talk about the students who are going to come in because they're quarantining, or they potentially have symptoms, are we going to have those parents this time bring a note? Is there going to be, in other words, is there going to be some sort of, doctor's note, or how will that actually, so that if we're saying that you cannot be, home, joining on Google Meet, how are you going to make sure that those students are in fact in the category that need to be home?
So our nurses already manage that, and and again, the planning phases, right? But what we've spoken with the faculty about so far is that I don't want teachers having for a number of reasons, right? If I'm conducting class right now and you show up on Google Meet, I don't want the teacher having that conversation with you in front of, the class. So the nurse will follow up. The teacher will have to, if the teacher hasn't been notified, Mary Waite is on the list to join via Google Meet, then the teacher will need to forward your name to the nurse and or an assistant principal, a member of the administrative team will follow up to see what's what. In the current model, when teachers have and we have had teachers forward names, that's what we've done. And in most cases, it's been, things like I said, oh, so-and-so was really tired today, that's why they stayed home. But in some cases it was a legitimate reason. And I have to say, overwhelmingly though, the parents have been very good at communicating with our nurses and sharing that information without us having to track it down. But for moving forward, like I said, any student who shows up on Google Meet, we will, as soon as we have the name, reach out to follow up.
Okay. And I don't want to take a lot of your time, but I did have just two questions. One about lunches. When students are, those spaces, are they going to have the option to choose those spaces besides, again, the band students, or are those going to be assigned spaces?
So the way our dining hall has worked all year, and the way it will continue to work is, it's really, we need to be efficient, so we can't wait and we can't have kids crossing paths.
Right.
That would defeat the purpose. So the kids who are buying lunch go right into the servery. The students who bring their lunch, we fill in as far forward as we can. And then as we reach capacity in the dining hall, the next overflow area is the auditorium. And then so on.
Okay. Right. And I guess my last quick question.
The outside seating would just be would be an extension of our dining hall, essentially.
Okay. And then I think we talked before about tents. Are you still utilizing tents for anything at this point, or is that?
No, Mr. Kiley and I had a multiple conversation, and it's not, there's no bang for your buck for us for tents, particularly for eating out. It was going to be primarily eating outside. We don't have a need for classroom space
that's good.
for it, so there was no point to that. So, no tents at the high school.
Okay, but again, like a tremendous amount of work here.
Can I cut you off real quick here?
Yeah.
Pretty much almost out of time, and I'm really concerned about this. I want to check in with the committee. The return of the high school is a really important thing, right? And I don't want to not have Mr. Oliver or Miss Amaral or myself be able to ask questions, but we are running into the time where we need to sort of motion out and get into with a joint session. So my question to the committee, on the one hand, I hate to ask Mr. Tebow to come back, but on the other hand, I think this is an important issue, and I don't want to say, okay, Miss Amaral, you have 30 seconds, and Mr. Oliver, you have 30 seconds, right? So what's the pleasure of the committee about how to proceed here? Mr. Oliver.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got lots of questions. So I'm not sure if we want to see if Mr. Tebow is available to come back this evening, another night, our next meeting. What's the date?
Our
next meeting is until
they show up.
It's not until the 17th.
That's
the concern.
Okay.
So Mr. T,
which will be after the date.
Yes, Mr. Tebow, would you be available what are we thinking about an hour to, because we can adjourn this meeting and reopen back into this session. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Noon.
You are correct. We have to adjourn and we will return to open session.
Right.
Okay.
But the question is, Mr. Tebow, would you be available to join us again in probably about, I don't know, what do we say? Think about an hour?
I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah. Otherwise, Mr. Tebow, we're going to ask you to come back to another meeting. So pick your poison.
No, I'm happy. You know, I'm happy to be back at 7:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
That would be fabulous.
Thank you.
What I
Yeah,
will
thank you. I was
ask-
rushing.
Yeah, what I will ask is, Dr. Gifford, can you keep Mr. Tebow sort of updated via text? It's going to be earlier, or if we're running late, you know, he can go put on his pajamas or whatever. I don't want him to be sitting at 7:30 in the meeting waiting for us if it goes later. So we'll try to keep you updated that way, Mr. Tebow.
Okay.
We'll give it some space. And Ms. Waite says she has questions, and the rest of us, I think, have questions too.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so first, I believe now I can entertain a motion to adjourn our regular session to convene into an open joint session with the Select Board and the Finance Committee to return to our open session later. Did I do that right, Mr. Nunes?
Very good.
Will you make a motion for me?
Sure. So moved.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion for Mr. Nunes, a second from Mr. Oliver. We will reconvene into same link. We'll stay live. We'll reconvene into this session after that session is done. Mr. Tebow will join us again. I will also remind people that if you have public comments, we will check in with Ms. Genther. Ms. Genther, do you have anything right now?
No.
So I will remind people that they can email you, right, while we are in the joint session, when we reconvene, and we will take that back up. So I need a roll call.
Chris Oliver,
Yes.
Shannon Jenkins,
Yes.
Kathleen Amaral,
Yes.
Mary Waite,
Yes.
John Nunes.
Yes.
And thank you, everyone. I'll see you in the joint session and then back here in a little while, back here on this same link.
Okay.
Same bad time,
Bye.
same bad channel.
Thank you. We're still live for our live audience. I'm just going to let everyone know we're waiting. We have a couple more people. I'm waiting to come back from the joint meeting, and then we will reconvene for anyone who's watching. I'm going to give Ms. Kate another minute, and then we'll get started. All right, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Nunes, but I believe I need to entertain a motion to reconvene into open session. Is that correct? Like my parliamentarian, Mr. Nunes.
Yes, ma'am.
So I will entertain a motion to reconvene into open session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Mr. Oliver. Can we have a roll call, please, Ms. Genther?
Shannon Jenkins,
Yes.
Chris Oliver,
Yes.
Mary Waite, Kathleen Amaral,
Yes.
John Nunes.
Yes.
So hopefully Ms. Waite will be able to join us in a second. I didn't want to make Mr. Tebow wait any longer. We've been keeping him on hold a long time. I know Ms. Amaral and Mr. Oliver probably have questions. I do too. And then hopefully Ms. Waite will join us and she can put forward any other questions that she had. Mr. Oliver, you indicated that you had some questions. So would you like, for Mr. Tebow, would you like to begin?
Could I interrupt? Can I just
Mr.
respond to
Tebow.
Mr. Nunes? I had told him I would get him an answer on the locker rooms, and in the break, I actually called Mr.
That's
Chris.
pretty impressive.
So I would just like to confirm that we have not used the locker rooms for our phys ed classes this year, which is what I thought. We've used it in a very limited capacity for athletics,
Right.
with markings at 8 feet apart, and limited to no more than 12 athletes at a time in the locker room. And that's true of both the high school locker room as well as the locker rooms at the middle school that are used for athletics. Again, those markings were put down by Mr. Crisafulli and all within the guidance. In terms of moving forward, we don't anticipate using the locker rooms for phys ed classes. Like I said, a lot of it will be outdoors. A lot of it are lawn games, yard games, walking the track, things that don't include high respiration, given the pandemic. And with only 5 weeks left in the school year, that's kind of the plan for that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Tebow.
Thank you, Mr. Tebow. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Oliver, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. So first of all, thank you for the presentation, Mr. Tebow. I appreciate all the work that you put into, you and your staff, for trying to make this happen, the reopening of the high school. To Mrs. Waite's point about notifying the school about and students that are having to quarantine and whatnot, but correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if this is a question from Mr. Tebow or Dr. Gifford, that DESE has kind of changed the requirements or changed the reporting for what they consider a close contact in the school systems. So I think I do agree that we're going to see a lot less close contacts being reported, especially due to the fact that essentially DESE has changed the guidance to allow for, full return to school. That's essentially what they're doing. They've gone ahead and they've changed the guidance. So we can now go ahead with, move forward with full in-person classes. So I fully expect that we won't see any, we haven't, I believe we haven't seen as many close contacts already as it is. Do we know how, we're just coming off of April vacation. This is just a general question. Do we know, have we had any positives in the district reported to us over the weekend or today?
I know I received one today from DeMello. Obviously it was, from vacation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's actually not too bad.
No.
Before we move on, can I follow up on the same sort of in this wheelhouse? I took Mary's question a different way, and it may not have been the way she meant it, but here's the way I take it. Like, my son is a senior, and they are not good. The seniors, right? They are like, a lot of them, I see all his friends, they're like checked out, they're done, they dislike the hybrid. And what I took from Mary's question is not like people who actually need to COVID quarantine, but people whose parents are like, yeah, sure, you need to COVID quarantine. I'm just going to call in and say you had a close contact. To Mr. Tebow's points, there's only 4 weeks left, so I'll just call in a couple of close contacts, and you can hybrid it out. That's the way I took it. I don't know.
That's where I was going. So thank you, Shannon.
That's what I'm seeing. And so I wonder how you're going to combat that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I will say this, that the nurses, Marisha Wildrick has been nothing short of phenomenal in terms of her close collaboration with the department, with the Board of Health rather, and with Dartmouth's town nurse Maura. They're in constant communication with one another. But again, even the close contacting, even the contact tracing, it's all on the honor system, for lack of a better word.
Right.
So it's up to people doing the right thing. We're 12 months, 13 months into this at this point. It's been like this for the past 13 months. The optimistic side of me says people will do the right thing. The more realistic side says there will be people who will do what you're saying. It's a handful of weeks. We're not going to eliminate it at this point. The only thing I think I can do is encourage people to do the right thing, encourage people to send their students to school. And I do think there'll be some seniors. I think there'll be some students across all grade levels who, quite frankly, are 13 months into a pandemic and they've gotten used to not coming 5 days a week. And at the high school level, I think it's a little bit different than the elementary or middle school level, where parents have more control. I mean, that's the reality of it. Although I have 2 elementary kids and sometimes I wonder if I have control. So I get that, but it's different sending an elementary school student to school versus having that battle with a 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old who has gotten used to not coming every day. Fortunately, it is at the end of the year, and this is a step towards a full return to normalcy. We have 150 kids who are going to stay fully remote, who next year the Department of Ed is saying is not an option. So those students are going to need to be integrated back into school full time as well. So there are certainly challenges at the high school level. There's no doubt about it.
Sorry, I know, Mr. Oliver, you said you had other questions. Mine just sort of followed on that, so I wanted to go ahead with your questions.
Yeah, no problem. So one of my other questions, Mr. Tebow, is just logistically around the students moving in the hallways. Are students going to see more staff floating around? How are you going to, control? Because like you said, it's really difficult to have a staggered bell schedule or a staggered schedule where students are because of the dynamics of the classes. How do you expect to accomplish that?
Sure. So the administrators, we have assigned routes that we take during the passing time. Obviously from time to time you're in a meeting, you don't get to it, but we try and be pretty vigilant in terms of our routes to do that, to monitor the hallways. We also have the security monitors in the hallways. We also do have teachers who come out to their, to the door during passing time as well. It's one of those things, though, that if you're at the door, now there's more people in the hallway as well. So it is, it's our kids for the most part are very good at moving from class to class, much more so than in years past, obviously.
Sure.
But again, it is going to take consistent messaging and a consistent push from everyone, all hands on deck, because as I said earlier, with only 450 kids in the building does feel quite empty most days. And so there's not, it's very easy to become lax, I guess is my point, because the halls aren't crowded right now. So I think when we have twice as many kids, repeatedly saying, come on guys, let's get to class. They do, they move, they listen. Our kids are so good in terms of they listen to the direction of the adults. So as long as we are consistent in providing that message, I think our kids will rise to the occasion for sure.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Just one last question. This is kind of just generally speaking, and I guess this might be for Dr. Gifford. I don't want to take up too much more time. But has DESE or the state talked about any kind of mandates for the vaccine for next year for students of 16 plus right now, or if they change that if they change the age guidelines? Has there been any talk about mandating it?
No, I haven't heard anything.
We've
As of
had
yet.
some conversations about that on our campus, and part of the problem is the emergency authorization. It's difficult to legally mandate a vaccine until it's officially authorized. And so it's not clear. Our director of health services has told us when that full authorization from the FDA will come in. And we've been told a lot of people in the state are looking for guidance from the state on this, but as we've learned in the pandemic, action from the state can be hit or miss.
Right.
Who knows when and if that will come, but there are definitely legal questions about that.
So I had heard, Dr. Jenkins, that UMass Amherst had made it mandatory. Is
They
that
just did. They just
They
did.
did.
And in fact, all the publics were playing chicken, and they all kind of came out on the same day. But we're getting different guidance from different lawyers. So
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's really it. That was my last question. So thank you.
all right, and Ms. Wade, I see you, but Ms. Amaral, I think had some questions too. And I'll come back around to you. Okay.
Oh, no worries.
Are you good?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm just in awe. I really appreciate everyone and Ross, you and your staff and just everyone just bending and flipping and pivoting and making this work. That's really all. Others have kind of covered the questions that I had. Can't think of any others. I just look forward to this happening, and I commend you for all of your planning and dedication to this. And I just hope for the best, really. That's all I have.
All right, Ms. Waite, and then I think maybe, I don't know if Mr. Nunes is stretching so he's after Ms. Waite and then Mr. Nunes. I see you. All right, go ahead, Ms. Waite.
I just had a quick question to kind of follow up on what you were talking about on the vaccines. Do we know how many students and staff, like what percentage roughly qualify for the vaccine, and how many have actually gotten the vaccine at this point? Is there any record keeping of that for, let's say, like my daughter got her vaccine today, her first shot today. Is there any record keeping with the nurses, or just to kind of give us?
No, that would be HIPAA. We wouldn't keep
Okay.
any records on that. No.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Nunes?
That was kind of basically my question. I was just wondering, especially with the shots now open and they're telling people, that there is not a surplus, but, it's not as long a wait and everything else. If, Mr. Tebow had heard of, any of our 16-year-old sophomores and ups that started to get the shot back, but that kind of answered that question. If he had heard through the grapevine as things can be.
Yeah, so I can tell you that I met with the student council officers. They're all seniors. So So they're all probably 17 or 18 at this point. Excuse me. Of the 4, I think 2, if not 3 of them had already gotten it. One of them shared that she was the last of her friend group to get vaccinated. So that's encouraging. It's anecdotal, obviously, and it's a very small, it's 4 seniors, right? Out of 260.
Oh, no.
So it's anecdotal and small, but I do think we have a number of seniors, a number of students who can get it because of how old they are, starting to get it. So that's encouraging.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
So I
Thank
guess
you.
I want to just sort of start off and say how, again, to echo Ms. Amaral, how deeply appreciative I am of, everything your staff has been doing. This has been a real challenge. It has. But I said this at the last meeting, and I also shared this in an email with you and Dr. Gifford. Lots of kids are struggling, right? Like, I just looked at some data. 46% of parents report that their teenagers have some mental health issues related to the pandemic. And I remain deeply concerned that we're not doing enough for these kids. We can talk about learning loss and making that up next year, but the high school, in my mind, is a little unique because it creates a record that then must be sent off to colleges, right? Which they may say, okay, it was a pandemic, but if other schools are giving passing grades, doing learning academies like Everett, I worry that our kids are therefore going to be disadvantaged in this situation. I do not want to create more work for teachers and administrators right now in this moment, because we're all burnt out. We're all stressed. It has been a very difficult year. But I want us to think really seriously outside the box, particularly in the high school, about how not to hold these kids harmless. It's a global pandemic. We're all struggling. We have decades on these kids, right? So we have way better mental coping mechanisms than them. And I know we've talked about, oh, well, we can do credit recovery for these kids. Yes, but we do credit recovery anytime, right? That's not a pandemic solution. And my bottom line will always be, these kids have to be held harmless. It is been, there's lots of words I want to use that are not appropriate for a public meeting like this, for how bad it is for these kids to have the misfortune to be in school during a pandemic. None of their lives should be negatively impacted because nearly half of them have some sort of mental health challenge. And I know it's been great, for a week after, right? You can go and you can, like, my kids were depressed for months, right? A 1-week makeup window doesn't help. And they've shoveled themselves a hole so deep because of mental health challenges that I'm not sure they're going to be able to get out. I'm a squeaky wheel, and Mr. Tebow, you're the social workers, the guidance counselors, they have been fabulous. But I worry about some of the other kids who maybe aren't squeaky wheels, who we don't see, whose grades have only dipped a little. And I don't want to do it now, but I don't want us to forget this. And I really want us to think outside of the box about what we can do to make sure these kids are held harmless. And again, I think I'm saying this to you, I think it's generally we have to be concerned about learning loss, but the high school is in a special position because of the fact that they are creating a record that goes out into the world. And so I really want us to just be creative in thinking about how we can help these kids who've been harmed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you with many of the points you're making. To be honest, I don't really worry about learning loss so much, to be quite frank. If we've done our job as educators and teach kids how to think and give them the skills they need to be lifelong learners, they can make up learning loss. They're going to live a long time. I am much more concerned with the social emotional toll of isolating during, the pandemic. There's no disputing that has had an impact on high school students for sure. I also agree with your, your assessment that the social workers, school counselors, assistant principals, the student support teams in themselves have done a phenomenal job of, monitoring exactly what you're talking about. Yes, you advocate for your children and do a nice job with that. But I hope you understand that we do have systems in place for those students whose parents aren't as comfortable or, able to advocate. We look at, I happen to look at notes, because we do have students who are struggling. And we have this year tried to, have treated every case as a case-by-case basis. We try and identify what interventions are needed to bring that particular kid, back to success. Sometimes, and it's a wide range of things that we do. Like, I was just looking at a student today who we've reduced their schedule down to just it happens to be senior, just what the senior needs to graduate. So we remove all that other anxiety. We remove, and again, that's a small thing, but we do that on a case-by-case basis.
Can I follow up on that though? Like in those situations, that student who's had their schedule drawn down, what happened to the grades in the classes that they were dropped from?
So it all depends on when, right? Some of those things. And again, some of those things are not within our control, right? The Department of Ed, the way we have to report it, if they leave after a certain time, it has to be withdrawn pass or withdrawn fail, right?
Right. But these are the things also that I think we as a school committee can advocate for. Like, I will send letters, like we want to help in this effort. Right. I think we should just be in our school at UMass. We have extended the withdrawal deadline till the last day of class, and it's a W. It doesn't indicate whether you're passing or failing.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't do this, then we as a committee should be advocating to our state legislators for our kids to say, you need to make this rule change. This is a pandemic. So I 100% appreciate that, but that kid, that case, I don't know, whoever it is, his transcript for a senior year should have the 4 classes that he finished, she, they, them, whatever, and because it's a pandemic, right? And that's really what it should be. So I hope if there are things that you cannot do that would be good for the kids, you let us know as a committee, because that's our job. And I think I'm speaking for the other members of the committee. We will make that case. I don't know that we're going to be successful, but we all have been in contact with our state rep and our state senator. They are very good about being communicative with us and responding to us. So let us know if there are things that you'd like to do. And, Desi says, oh no, you can't do it. That's literally our job. Ms. Waite.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Dr. Jenkins has said. And again, also, reiterating, of course, we appreciate what everyone is doing in the schools and reaching out. I mean, it's just there's so many kids that are in great need. So, and I think one of the points that she was alluding to also is that, these, they're juniors. I talked to a friend of mine in a different district who has a junior, and, lo and behold, he was, fairly autonomous, she thought. And then she gets his transcripts. He's failed 3 classes. And, he was someone who was looking at high level colleges, and now, he's got mental health issues and everything else that, Dr. Jenkins is referring to. And he's concerned about now his future in 1 year has gone, into the pits. And that, it's not just getting through those classes and he finished the work for the class. It's that he's looking in his mind at a completely different future based on this 1 year. And the entire family is struggling with that, tension and frustration. And how do we let again, it just ends up being, cascading. So, it's happening I hear this story over and over again from, friends that I have and, other parents. And I think it's not as simple as to say, we just want to finish the class. It's the sense of what, this means, as, Dr. Jenkins was saying, for the future. And that it's a tough scenario, but. And I think Oliver won that.
Oliver, you had your hand up?
Oh, I did. Yeah, my audio cut out there for a minute. Just 2 points. One, I just have some notes here. When it comes down to the reporting, I can certainly understand your point of view, Dr. Jenkins, and I agree that it comes back to DESE. You know, I don't think doing a wonderful job leading this Commonwealth during this pandemic. The way they have flip-flopped, the way they have given out or not given out guidance or lack thereof good guidance in a short period of time. And this is just another example of, you know, I don't want to say poor leadership, but a lack of leadership during this pandemic. And I agree. I think we need to advocate at the state level about the withdrawing, about reporting grades, because let's face it, every school district at the middle school, at the high school level has to report final grades to the Department of Education. So, you know, they're looking at that data. So they're aware if we don't do that, that we're not going to be in compliance with their protocols. So I agree. We need to advocate. We need to do better because they're clearly not living up to, you know, what I expect that they can do. And just my other point is, I agree. I think we're going to see a lot more students as we're coming out of this pandemic. I see it already with, you know, some of the teenagers at the high school that I know being more withdrawn. They're withdrawn from their friend groups. They're withdrawn from school. And they're just, you know, living through this past year has made them, given them significant mental health issues. So I am worried about that. And I think that, you know, the addition, and this isn't a cure-all, but the addition of social workers in the district is at least a start. But I do agree that, you know, anything that we can do to be proactive in this issue with mental health, I think will go a long way.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Mr. Tebow, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming back after that break and even doing research during the break to answer our questions. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr.
my
Tebow.
pleasure.
Yes, thank you
all.
very
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Tebow.
Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
You also.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
So that was technically, Mr. Tebow's presentation was technically part of the superintendent's update. I'm going to ask the superintendent whether she has any other updates that she would like to add. No, you're all set? Okay, I don't have anything to report as chair right now. You may be losing me too. Can you guys still hear me? I got that internet
Yes.
unstable. You know, you get that and you're like, oh my God, like, what have they heard? What have they not heard? Does anybody else have anything they would like to add before we adjourn?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just through you
Yes,
to,
Mr. Nunes.
yeah, through you to Mr. Kiley. Do you have any warrants that need signing? I mean, we normally would be signing them tonight, but.
I do have one ready.
Okay.
So, you know, I can leave it in my office, and whenever anybody gets a chance to stop by, it'll be there.
I can do that tomorrow.
I can as
Okay.
well.
Well, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can too.
Okay, so well, if the three of you do it, that's fine. If someone doesn't want, I have an overdue library book from DeMello that I can drop off. Yeah,
What's
Bush Street.
What's
like a
the
hot
fine
potato.
for that, you know?
Yeah, there are fees for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Mr. Kiley will be after me, I'm sure.
Raise some money.
Any other comments or questions?
No.
Ms. Genther, did we have any public comments during the period we were off?
No.
We did not.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no other business at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session for an update on negotiations with union and non-union personnel, not to return into open session.
Yeah, no. Our next meeting is May 17th, Madam Chair.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Mr. Neiman.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Nunes, a second by Ms. Wade. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please, Ms. Genther?
Shannon Jenkins,
Yes.
Mary Waite,
Yes.
Kathleen Amaral,
Yes.
Chris Oliver,
Yes.
John Nunes.
Yes.
In the executive session, everyone.